Welcome to the demo session. My name is Aishwarya, and I am a German language tutor and a trainer from Mumbai. And it's been 4 years since I've been tutoring German as a foreign language as well as for schools. And I've been training working professionals who wish to go to Germany for their work, for their business. And I also train MS students, like the students who want to go to Germany for their MS or undergraduate, as well as for PhD and higher education. So I have completed my C1. I have written the B2 exam from Kalagora Institute, the Max Muller Institute at Kalagora, Mumbai Center. And when I was a student there, that's where I got a chance to be acquainted with German culture, even though I lived in India. And when I teach, what I make sure is that I offer that same cultural experience as I teach German to you. So without further ado, let's get into what is going to be in our today's demo session. So in today's demo session, there will be certain points that I'll be talking about. So let's go to those points. So the first thing I always like to cover as a part of my demo session is that understanding what is German. Many people have this idea of, okay, maybe it is like English or not. Now it happens and it's pretty natural. The reason we try to compare it with English is that the way we were taught English in our schools was that it was our first introduction to a European language that we started learning from a very young age. And as we grew and as we started watching more television shows and movies and series, that's where we start getting acquainted with how it is spoken, as well as we started noticing that, okay, there was a difference between how the Americans speak it, how the English people speak it, and so on. So if the same happens with you when you are getting into learning German, that's completely normal. Now, speaking of English, I'll make a statement. The statement goes that English is a Germanic language. If you think of this statement, it basically tells you that there happens to be a family of Germanic languages, and English is one of them. So just from that, we get an idea that of the language family, German and English, to some extent, they belong to the same family. So that is what we'll be looking at, and how that difference at all makes, as in works as a benefit for us, the speakers of English as a foreign language, to acquire German better. Then the next topic I'll be talking about are the personal pronouns. Now it's something that we have been learning since our primary school, our secondary schools, but we'll be reviewing those with the help of English pronouns in German. Then we'll be looking at the process of verb conjugation. Now, speaking of verb conjugation, the reason that I always mention in the demo sessions is that we use it every day, and it works on such a subconscious level that we are not even aware that, okay, I'm actually using this when I speak it. And then I'll be demonstrating the personal pronouns and verb conjugation with one tiny exercise that we'll be solving. And once we are done with that exercise, we'll be looking at the 2 golden rules of German language. That is all you need to know when it comes to learning German. Now, moving on to understanding the concept of Germanic languages, like I mentioned, that English, German, Dutch, even Swedish, and a couple more languages, they all fall in the same family of Germanic languages. But this family of Germanic languages also belongs to a bigger family, that's the Indo-European languages, where we not only have German, but we also have many of Central and North Indian languages. So if it's possible for you, I would always recommend that you learn German, you acquire German, the language, as a skill with the help of your native tongue. Now, I did mention Central and North Indian languages, but there are certain similarities between South Indian languages and German as well. So always try to make those connections instead of simply thinking of, okay, I'm only going to think of English and what word it means in English. Try not to do that. Then moving on to the personal pronomen, nominative, or the personal pronouns of the subject case. So here on the board, you can see that on the left, I have mentioned the personal pronouns in English for the first person, second person, and third person. And then on the right, I have written the same pronouns, but in German. Now on the board, you can see that I have made a special row and a column where it says formal and informal. Now, I needed to make this distinction as a part of this PPT, especially now that we are looking into understanding English and German pronouns, is that when you think of the English pronoun you, whether you're talking to your boss, your colleague, your friend, your siblings, you're still using the same pronoun. The pronoun is not really changing. As in, the pronunciation is the same, the spelling doesn't change at all. Now, think of the same concept, but in your native language. It could be Marathi, it could be Hindi, it could be any other language, apart from English, that is, if you speak any other language apart from English, especially any Indian language, then think of the pronoun for you that you would use for your sibling or someone who is simply just of your age. Then think of a pronoun that you would use to address someone who has some authority or who is an elderly. And then think of a pronoun that you would use to, again, you're talking about you. That's the only one pronoun we're looking at. But this time, you're talking to a group of people, they same the same age as you, and then another group which say they are your colleagues or from work or they have some seniority to them. Now think of those pronouns in English, which all of it we would just use you, and then think of the pronouns in your language. In most Indian languages, when you're addressing a person of authority, you use a separate pronoun. If you're addressing someone who is the same age as you, say your acquaintance, say someone who you know very well, you would use a different pronoun for that person, right? So the same thing we have in German as well. So when we look at the pronouns, we see that for I, that's the first person singular, we have the German pronoun ich. Then for we, first person plural, we have wir. Then let's go to the third person directly, which also indicates that we have three genders when it comes to the pronouns. So we have masculine, we have feminine, and then we have the neutral gender, which is again indicated in German as well, that is er, sie, and es. Now, this is the part that I was talking about. When you address someone with seniority, or if you are talking to someone by being respectful, that's where in English you would use the same pronoun as you would do for second person singular and plural informally. In German, the pronoun changes. So to give you an example in Hindi, because that is a language that many of us eventually pick up, whether it's from movies or from friends, think of this do as tum when you are talking to a friend, but it's just one friend that you're talking to. On the same note, think of this z here, singular, that is, as if you're talking to your teacher or as if you're talking to your parents, whom you would address as aap. You wouldn't call them tum. Out of respect, you will call them aap. So that's the difference. And then ear is basically the plural of it. So if it's more than one friend of yours, you would say tum sab, for example. That would be ear. And z would be aap sab. That's it. And then coming to the third person plural, the German pronoun is sie, and so is the pronoun for third person feminine. Now I'll repeat the pronouns once again. We have ich, wir, du, ihr, er, sie, es, sie, and sie. No change in pronunciation whatsoever. It's just that for the formal you, whether it's singular or plural, we need to write the first letter capital. That's it. Now this brings us to the issue of both the pronouns having different meanings. So how do you figure out, if you read a sentence, how would you know if this pronoun is third person singular, that is if it's she, or if it's they? And this is where the verb conjugation helps us. So let us go to our next slide. So let me come back to what is verb conjugation. So what we saw just before this particular slide is that there was a pronoun sie for third person singular and for third person plural. Both had identical spelling, identical pronunciation, but then how do we know the difference? If you see the pronoun ze, how would you know if it's she or if it's they? So this is where verb conjugation helps us. Now, understanding verb conjugation is basically understanding how we use a verb in a sentence. So I've given the example of the verb to learn, and I'll be writing that. So in English, when you want to use the verb to learn, you wouldn't say I to learn. What you do is that you eliminate the to so that it becomes a part of the sentence. When you talk about, say, third person singular, she or he or it, not only you remove the to, you also need to add an extra s. Now, when you think of third person plural, here you will again be removing the to and you'll just keep the learn as it is. Now here if you add the s, say it becomes they learns, it won't sound right because that is incorrect. So what we just did, going from to learn to forming these three short sentences, is basically verb conjugation. Now, the way verb conjugation works in German language is that a verb infinitive usually looks like this, where you have stem of a verb, I'll write that too, and then there is the ending part of the word, that is the en, as you can see here. So the way we conjugate a German verb is that we eliminate the en and instead add different letters that indicate that okay, the one of these is the subject of that particular verb. Now, to demonstrate this, think of the verb to learn in your native language, if it's other than English, that is. Usually, in most Indian languages, the way our verb infinitives are formed usually go, I'll demonstrate it with the example of Hindi. It usually goes something like this. So in Hindi, the verb to learn is seekhna. Now, again, this is just an example. You can think of an verb infinitive in your language as well. If you think of seekhna, when I want to use it in a sentence, that is when I want to conjugate it, I'm not going to say main seekhna. Instead, what I do is that I eliminate the na part of this word. I keep this word as it is, and then I add whatever I want to make sense. Like, मैं सीख रही हूँ, मैं सीख रहा हूँ, हम सीख रहे हैं, and so on. So the same process happens in German language as well. So again, from the example of Hindi, the seek part would be the stem, and na is the ending that we got rid of. Now in Hindi, we needed to add two different words. In German, the same can be done with the help of a letter. So when I talk about myself, ich lerne, that means this e ending indicates that the subject is I. When I talk about a second person informally, du lernst, it means that the st is referring to you, that is, it's you learn. zs. So for the third person singular, we have identical verb conjugation, which also indicates that in German language, the gender is not really gender sensitive. Sorry, the verb conjugation is not really gender sensitive. So in Hindi, for example, if I say मैं सीख रही हूँ, that indicates that I'm a girl. Had I been a boy, I would have said मैं सीख रहा हूँ. We don't have that change in German language. And then moving to wir, again, we are adding the en back. There's we lernen, ihr lernt, again just a T. And now Z for they, it's lernen. So this is how we get to see our difference. So this Z here will always be third person singular from here. And this Z lernen will always be the third person plural. Yeah. So let us look at an example where we get to solve certain sentences. Now, on this page, if you wish to solve it on your own, you can take a screenshot here and try to practice it as you learn it. We will not be looking exclusively at what the sentence means, because the exercise for us here is that we just learn how to conjugate the verb. So I'll give you an example of the first verb that has been used, that is common. Now, I have mentioned this table here so that it helps you as you solve this exercise. Now, looking at the first sentence, Maria, I understand that Maria is a name of a girl. So it's a girl, third person singular. My endo will be Justy. Maria kommt aus Rom. That would be my sentence. Then Carlos, name of a guy. I'll go with again T. Carlos kommt aus Madrid. Then the next sentence, ish. Now it's talking about I. So the ending would be E. Ish, comma, aus. I'll explain this blank once we get to the meaning of the word. And then the fourth sentence goes, Carl and Eva. So now what I understand here is Carl is the name of a guy and Eva is the name of a girl. But together, they are the third person singular, just what I said, they. So this is the verb conjugation I'll be using. Carlo neva kommen auspassa. Now that we have understood the process of verb conjugation, now let us go to understanding the words. So we have kommen, that is to come. That is being paired with a preposition aus, which here works like from. So Maria kommt aus Rom, Maria comes from Rome. Carlos kommt aus Madrid, Carlos comes from Madrid. Ich komme aus Mumbai, so I'll write that I am from Mumbai. And then the fourth sentence, Carl and Eva kommen aus Passau, Carl and Eva come from Passau. That's all there is. Now, going to the two golden rules of German language. So as you solve the rest of the sentences with the help of this table here, you will notice that on the left side, because we are talking about the names of the cities, all the first letter of the names of the cities is capital. But when you will look at these sentences here on the right, you're going to notice that these are actually everyday objects that are being used. So Obst is fruits, cola is the drink, Coca-Cola, ice is an ice cream, mineral Wasser is mineral water, Orangensaft, orange juice, Kaffee is coffee, beer is beer. But what's special here is that because all these are nouns, the first letter is capital. So that brings us to the first golden rule of German language, that is, no matter which type of noun it has to begin with its first letter capital, whether it's a common noun or a proper noun. In English, the rule only applies to the proper nouns, but in German, the rule applies to common nouns as well. Yeah. And the second golden rule being that the position of verb is always at the second position. So the verb conjugation that we just learned was of the presence. That is the continuity of time. We don't use present continuous or simple present in German. It's just the continuity of time that we talk about, because we do not simply have simple present and present continuous separately in German language. It's just one tense. Yeah. So with that, let me quickly talk about myself. As I had introduced myself initially, I'll do that once again. So like I said, my name is Aishwarya. I'm from Mumbai, and I've completed till my C1, that is I've attended C1 and I wrote the B2.2 exam at Goethe Institute Kalabura. And because I have completed all my levels at Kalabura itself, I was privileged enough to use the best resources that I could with the help of the library. And to facilitate that to some extent, what I do is that as a part of all my courses, really, I also offer you audiobooks that you need not buy. I have bought them, so I have the rights to distribute, so I do that with you. Along with that, I've also bought other resources that I share with you, so that without you visiting any library, you have a digital library of your own. Apart from German, regarding my graduation, I'm a graduate of history. I have completed my graduation in history with CGPA 9.95 from Elphinstone College, University of Mumbai. And I have worked as a German language expert, German translator, but it was one particular incident that I can recall very well. Like there was one point when I was working as a German language translator, and it was a 9 to 5 job. And then in the evening, I was tutoring at this private institute in Navi Mumbai. And that's where I realized that it was actually teaching that brought me more joy. And that's the result. I made a switch from being a translator to a full time tutor. And it's been 4 years now, well, more than 4 years, that I've started tutoring online. So now I tutor German, I train German, and along with that, I also teach subjects of humanities. Thank you so much for your time.